All right, so those are the conversations, both local and global, which we've got lined up. Simon Powell is Global Head of Thematic Research at Jefferies. He's joining us right now to take some questions on what we're seeing in markets. Simon, great to have you here. Thank you very much. 2%, 2.5% here on the benchmark indices in India. Across Asia, there is red. Just tell us how you're thinking about this, this new limited information on the new virus variant that we got overnight. Some people we've spoken to said, well, we got the Delta Plus variant, which didn't amount to very much. We got other virus scares, variant scares, and they didn't amount to much. But the fact is that I don't think that we got this kind of market reaction when news first emerged about, say, for example, the Delta Plus or maybe other variants, which eventually did not turn out to be serious. So why is the market reacting in such a way to this new information?
I think you touched on it as I was watching you guys in the intro. There's potentially some profit taking here. I think there's a lot of speculation, but very few clear answers at this point. And it feels like we're back in familiar territory over growing concerns about a new variant of this virus. But it's early days, and we don't exactly know what we've got here. What do we know? We know that it's apparently, according to the scientists in South Africa, heavily mutated, but a lot of mutation doesn't automatically mean that it's bad. We've been here before. Remember, there was a beta variant early in 2020, or middle of 2020 into 2021, that was supposedly better at escaping the immune system, but it turns out that the Delta variant became kind of dominant. So, as you highlighted, the WHO are going to decide whether it's a variant of concern or a variant of interest. At any time, we may be dealing with 4 or 5 variants of concern. If you go and look at what Public Health England are saying, they're tracking multiple variants of concern. So when I woke up to this news this morning, I wasn't overly concerned because we've kind of been here before. So I think the market reaction to this today, as one of your presenters said, there may be a little bit of profit taking in this news as opposed to genuine kind of fear here. We're very early in terms of getting some information on this variant.
Absolutely. Actually, there are some very helpful flashes or alerts on the market coming up on the screen. I just saw that the Sensex and the Nifty are down just about 8% each from the record high. So it's not even been a 10% fall in the market. This is a big bull market that we're sitting on. And every bull market has a correction, but this has not even been a 10% fall. So Simon, good morning. If you do believe that this is mere profit taking and India has not seen a big fall just yet, would your advice be to buy into this dip, build a basket of stocks, that one would want to buy if this fall accelerates? And how are you looking at it, particularly for the Indian markets now?
Yeah, well, the way to address these variants is to think about what might government reaction be to a more transmissible variant. And I think around the world, there's probably a consensus view that most governments are reticent to go back into the kind of lockdowns that we've seen in the past 2 years. And governments are getting better at more targeted approaches where there are outbreaks. So I think in general, you can say that whatever comes in terms of mutations of this virus, it's not likely we're going to see wholesale shutdowns of the kind that we saw before. And we do have greater vaccine penetration, even if that vaccine turns out to be slightly less effective against a new variant. So in a long-handed way, I'm saying, yes, people ought to potentially take opportunities to buy here because we form the view that the world isn't going to completely shut down again because people don't want that to happen.
Okay, hi Simon, good morning. This is Pavitra. If I can move a little bit away from COVID, we also did get the Fed minutes recently, and they've indicated that they might sort of have to hike rates sooner than earlier anticipated. Do you see that as a big risk for the markets going forward?
Oh, look, that's probably beyond the scope of the research that I look at. But, the debate in the market about whether the Fed is going to raise rates or not is more to do with economic activity and inflation than issues about the virus. I think there's an expectation in the market that's starting to be priced in, potentially, that there's going to be some kind of rate hike in the future. So I think, I think what's happening today is more about profit taking on the back of, well, this might be a variant of concern, so let's just take some money off the table coming into year end.
Simon, but we really don't know, right? I mean, that's the point, right? It could be nothing, it could be something. So it depends what kind of an investor you are, right?
Yeah, I guess it does. I mean, I think people are looking for an excuse to take profits here. If you think about where we've been, where we are already in US markets, Indian markets as well, people are needing an excuse to trim some exposure here. And this is a great opportunity to do that, given a little bit of potential negative news. And as you highlighted, US markets going to essentially be very thin today. And so Asian investors are going to have a long wait to see how the US market really reacts to this news. And by then, we may have more scientific information.
Yeah.
You know, I think, as I said, this is familiar territory. We've had multiple concerns over new variants. We've come so far away from the native coronavirus that we saw potentially came out of Wuhan, that what we're seeing now is massively different from a spike protein perspective. So I think the question is, how do governments react, and is this a variant that can properly evade vaccines? But I think, as you indicated, the pharma stocks are not getting beaten up today. So there's an expectation in the market that, you know, whatever variant comes, technology will find a solution to it. So I think in general, people are optimistic. I don't think this is hugely bad by any stretch of the imagination.
No, absolutely agree with that. You know, sometimes when prices fall, the analysis shifts based on what the price is doing, but the price is the price, and it's made up of opinion. Just Jefferies, Simon, just a quick word. Is it too early to, as you said, I mean, we've been here before. So in that sense, the script of what happens next, if, for example, this is a variant of concern, and you know, you need tech needs to go to work again, new vaccines or whatever. I mean, worst case, we had central banks throw everything at the problem last year in a big way. So you know, that will swing, right? I mean, from starting to talk about thinking about tightening a little bit or removing excess liquidity. I mean, all of that comes back into play, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, so I think if this is a variant of concern, let's take the worst case scenario. If this really is bad, and this is a version of the virus that is way more transmissible than Delta and is better at evading immune systems, and we don't yet know what the infection fatality ratio of this new variant is. And if you look, you'll see there's different infection fatality ratios for different variants. And in fact, the Delta variant, you know, the death rate wasn't as bad potentially as some of the early variants, because there is this theory that viruses over time become more transmissible but less lethal. And we've seen that with multiple viruses in human history. And so there is a very strong likelihood that this virus will eventually drift that way. It will become very transmissible but far less lethal. But to the question of this variant, if it does turn out to be very bad, well, first of all, travel bans out of Africa, which is apparently where this variant is emerging from, can immediately prevent the transmission, or at least slow it down significantly into the US, into India, into China, into Hong Kong, into other parts of the world. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing to think about is, if it was to break out or get into those markets, as you highlighted, central bankers seem to stand ready to do whatever's necessary to keep economies going. So as I said, I'm not hugely pessimistic on a new variant. We've been here before. It feels like very familiar territory. I think the media likes to play the, oh, look, here's a new variant that's going to completely evade vaccines, and you know, the sky is kind of falling a little bit. I think that sells newspapers, and it invokes clicks. But remember how many variants of concern we've seen in the last 2 years. But as you say, in the past, the market didn't react that way to variants, this way to variants of concern. Why is it reacting like this today? Well, it's
profit taking. Yeah, excuse.
And people are taking profits.
Yeah. Just very briefly, a 30-second answer to this. You said, well, what's happening is people are taking profits and using this as an excuse at this stage. But what should they be doing, really? I mean, is this a buying opportunity in your opinion?
Yeah, so our strategist, Chris Wood, who I think you've spoken to a number of times, is still very bullish on India. And certainly, we've already seen a big rotation out of China consumer stocks into India consumer stocks, and that kind of makes sense to us, and I think continues to make sense to us. And so I think investors should be fine continuing with that kind of trade. I do think China is obviously significantly beaten down on A, being closed, B, technology, regulation, etc., and Hong Kong as well. I do think, though, there is a defensive play here, that if this really is a bad variant of concern, take a look at 2 countries or 3 countries that are completely hermetically sealed. I'm sitting here in Hong Kong, nobody comes in and nobody effectively goes out. The quarantining is so stringent, 3 weeks in a hotel, and the same for China. So if there were 3 markets where a variant of concern is very unlikely to get into, it would be Hong Kong, China, and Taiwan. So I would be looking at those markets as well.
We leave it at that. Thanks a lot for joining us. So not too spooked, global investors not too spooked about the situation currently. The market as well, the selling pressure has been arrested. So the low that we hit in the day was 17,088. The Nifty is back above 17,163. So at least that's some respite to the bulls. Let's slip into a short break. We'll continue our focus on the markets. Alok Jain, the founder of Weekend